Last class we discussed about property and how property is helping any private member to be exposed. So based on last class understanding, um, I can write a note like this. Whenever you want to expose a field or data member, instead of making public, better to expose it through a property. So as a whole, if you summarize last class what you understood, this comes out. So if you want to expose a data or if you want to expose a field from a class, instead of making it public, better to expose it through a property, so that we'll have the various options like read only, read and write whenever required, no access, read only access, read and write access. So one more extended part, 2 more minutes I will take. It was related to property only, but we couldn't have time to discuss. So a property can be used independently also. A property can be used independently as well. How do you mean? That means last class we saw a variable is private and a property is helping that variable to be exposed. Exposed means accessed outside the class. But I can do like this also. Suppose this is a property, public string, something like my name, whatever name of the property. Suppose it is not at all having any relation with any other variable, then you can write it like this as well. Get semicolon, set semicolon. This is called read as well as write. Okay. It is almost as similar as writing a variable like this, public string, like I wrote my name. So what I'm getting here, same thing I will get here. Only benefit here is tomorrow if you don't want to give the write access, you can remove this set block. But here you don't have any clue. That's why that is the only benefit. Instead of taking a public variable, take a public property with get and set block. This is called independent property. It doesn't have any relation with any other variable. So similar to this. And if you want to give some hard coded data, that is also not having any relation with any other um, variable. Suppose you will say string organization name. So sometimes we know that organization name is not different every day. Okay, so entire this application is for a single organization. Then I can say no need to ask anybody, enter the organization, no need to have a dependency on any variable. Simply you can say return ABC Limited. So this is called read only with hard coded value. So we cannot achieve this through variable, but we can achieve this through variable. So these are all called independent property. You can see both the lines. It is not depending upon any predefined variable. So if you want to define these two here, you will see it is completely independent variable. So should I comment these two lines? Because we intentionally made them read only. So write is not allowed here, write is not allowed here. So coming here and putting some independent property. um, Address and city name equal to symbol return. Sorry, I have not given get actually here. You have to give get. Inside the get block, instead of saying return a variable, you are saying return some hard coded data. Okay, so read only with hard coded value. This is read as well as write, but both of these properties. Okay, both of these are independent of any predefined variable. So property has two works. Now you understood. One is they define the data from their own. One is they help um, other variables. So why not I will take it here, and here I will write below two properties help some other predefined variable to be exposed if any or if necessary. Okay, so what is the use of property means you have to say both the points. A property itself is a data member, so independently it can be defined with read as well as read and write, and property also helps other data members to be exposed outside. So other data member part already we have seen yesterday. So today we saw how to expose outside. So now what I will do, since city name already got the value but address has not yet got the value, so let me come here and write address equal to something. This is a new address, something like that. So you can come here and expose that address easily, because you can see here address is get as well as set. That means read as well as write. So here you come and say console.writeLine. Some sound is coming, guys. So console.writeLine, new address is obj org1 dot, what is that, address. So this is called read, and if you want to write, write means modify. So come here and modify, because you have made it read as well as write, equal to, I said again changed to some other address, something like that I wrote, and here I want to display that again. So before line number 23, it will give me this sentence, this is a new address, and after that, that means line number 24, it will give me this sentence. That indicates I'm able to read it, I'm able to write it. So reading new address through independent property, modifying new address through independent property. Similarly, one more property we have called read only, which is again independent, city name. So console.writeLine city name is read only, so definitely it should give me access, but it will not give me permission to modify. So equal to, I will try to rename it to something else, but it is saying no, it is not possible. So give a comment here and say, if you want to see what is the error, it will definitely related to accessibility permission. Read the last line. Property or indexer so and so cannot be assigned to, because it is a read only. So not possible, because it's read only property. So dependency on variable and independent out of any predefined variable. So there are two area of use of the property. Since property almost covers everything, so most probably in real time case you will be using temporary variables wherever necessary, but fields or class variables, mostly more than 90% cases you will be using property. So whenever you will define any class and suddenly you are thinking some, you know, uh, data member has to be kept in that, then suddenly property should come to your mind, because all that a variable does, a property can do it, but all that a property does, a variable cannot do it. Any other question? Okay, so now we have to go to next feature. I will close this solution. Each and every feature will implement in separate solution. So next feature is inheritance. Inheritance. This is the easiest feature out of all OOPS concept. There are four major features. Out of this is the most, commonly used and easy feature, I will tell you. So where exactly we needed inheritance? So first is problem scenario. As usual, I have a class, suppose C1, and I have another class C2. Maybe I have another class also, say C3. So for a minute, forget about inheritance. First to understand a problem scenario where we should need inheritance. Why should we need inheritance? What's wrong with encapsulation? If that is providing security, hiding information from outside world, then what extra it is going to give? So first let's focus about encapsulation only. I provided some functionality, let's say x1, y1, and some function called maybe f1. I'm just writing the skeletal structure. That's why coding point of view I'm writing dot dot dot. Similarly, I have something here as well, x2, y2, maybe some function called f2. Similarly, I have here something x3, y3 as the data member and function as f3. Absolutely fine. Whenever we want to create C1 object, imagine this is your main inside program class, this is your main, and we are creating C1 obj equal to new C1, and then you are enjoying functionalities of obj1 like obj1.f1. Absolutely fine. Similarly, you made second class object and you call second class function. You have no problem. I will just put a line assuming this is some other class and these guys are some other class. So you have no problem. You know already encapsulation and you are able to create object of that class, whichever class functionality you want to call. Now imagine a particular data or a particular functionality you want to reuse across more than one class. For example, I want Z to be used by C1 as well as C2. Okay, understand the scenario. I want Z should be used by C1 and C2. So the moment I am making it integer Z, this is private now because I have not mentioned anything. So the moment I am giving private, no class can access. But the moment I give public, all other class can access. Read this sentence. The moment I made it public, C2 as well as C3 can access through object of C1. But the moment I made it private, not even C1, not even C2 can access Z through object of C1. But my requirement is what should I do so that this Z or this F1, whatever it is, whether it is a function, whether it is a data, should be accessible to C2. But at the same time, it should not be accessible to C3. Sometimes it makes sense also. Imagine this is not C1 This is called something accountant. This is not C2, this is called something called manager. This is not C3, this is something called security guard. Okay. So if some data is exposure to accountant, you can say that it's okay, that should be also exposure to manager. Say it is not Z, it is something called total income tax. Okay, if you think little real time way, just think it's not Z, it is total income tax of the company. So accountant obviously he has to know because he has to calculate it, but manager also should know because he needs a report. Okay. uh, Security guard, why should he know about income tax of the company? He might have come from some other vendor. He is not regular employee of our company. If regular employee also, he doesn't have rights to, you know, much more involve himself in the taxation of the company. So why should total income tax will be public? Why should total income tax will be public? Is there any way that this total income only will be exposed to these two guys, accountant and manager, but it should not be access to security guard? Okay. So if I'm making it private, everybody, nobody is able to use apart from that guy. If I'm making it public, everybody able to use, every class able to use. So I'm not happy with public also, I'm not happy with private also. Make sense? So that time, what you have to do, you make it protected first of all. Okay, make it protected. There is one additional concept on top of private and public game called protected, and you make this accountant as the parent class of manager, colon accountant. Now accountant become parent class and manager become child class. Okay, like your father gave you some property, some money, something. Similarly, accountant gave some data or some functionality to this guy called manager, but at the same time that is not exposure to security guard class. So protected meaning is should behave like public for child class, but should behave like private for other class. Let me write that here below. So private and public already you know before. Now note protected. A protected member, when I say member, it may be a variable, it may be a function. It may be a property also. A protected member is exposed, is accessible directly in same class, of course, always, even private also accessible in same class, as well as in child class, but not accessible in other classes. Indirectly saying that is behaves like public for child but behaves like private for others or other classes. So if any, not necessarily you are bound to have inheritance always, if any situation comes like this. Like the example what I took, you can say it's a real time example. In any company, no organization will try to expose everything about taxation to a security guard. His work is putting attendance, that's it. Why he should be bothered about total income of the company, tax of the company, profit and loss of the company, whether company is growing or going down, because those are all most of times came from other vendors, right? So this is a real case. I didn't want to give total income tax information to security guard, but I wanted to expose it to accountant as well as manager. So let's use this exactly same thing. Let's copy paste. Instead of this dot dot dot, we will use some coding like console dot write line and so on. So why not, I will copy straight to like this, and I will create a program. So three level, one is accountant, one is manager level, one is security guard level. So for all each level we have different class. Now which class object we are creating to access what, we will see in detail. I will name it as oops underscore inheritance. Inheritance. Okay, always we were creating additional classes in the same file. Today let's create in another file. One student was asking also, can we create one class in one file and another class in another program file? I said yes, it is possible. So let's do that. So right click the project, add, can you see here class? Just go to class, then you give the name of the class. So I gave the name of the class as, class means here class file name. So I gave the name of the class file name as organization, because all three stakeholders are belongs to the organization. So I named the file name as organization, add it, but actual class name I don't want organization, file name organization, but class name as we decided accountant, manager, security guard. So let's copy paste that here. So we have three classes. It will show error in dot dot dot. So you can write some console dot write line. Whatever value, should I take away this x1, y1 and all? Because that was only for your understanding. So imagine we have very small requirement, that is we have total income tax in accountant class. Do something so that it can be accessed by a manager, but it cannot be accessed by security guard. Okay, that is what the idea. So here, why not we will take a constructor to initialize it. So public accountant, sorry, default constructor, because I want to give a default value directly. You know, I'm giving some default value. I'm not asking main program to send it. Okay, so I directly gave the value here. So here inside accountant class, of course I can display. Okay, I will name this as show income tax and so on. Okay, or let it be F1, no problem, because we are only focusing about the data this time. So here I can say inside accountant class total income tax is just we want to see whether it is accessible up to what extent. Okay, this is one thing. If you are confusing, then I will press enter and make proper syntax how you are using before. Usually we are using like this, right? In one line also you can write, no issue. So similarly, I want to say inside manager class, total income tax is, can you see, I don't need even object to access that. When you make it protected and inheriting directly, that means in one understanding you can say simply this came and sit here in this class, so you don't need even object. But what about security guard? Whether directly you use, whether object you use, you cannot access that because it's protected. Protected means it will behave like private for other classes which is not having any relationship. But the moment here also will say accountant by chance, then here also you can start using it. But we don't do that because security guard is not supposed to get it. So if I will write similar program there and I will try to access it, it will say no, you cannot access it. Okay, it doesn't exist in the current context. It is saying not even in the same class it is existing, not even any other class is inheriting here, so not possible. So compilation error itself. So why should I execute it at all? So what I will do, I will make a comment line and I will mention that it is not possible. What I will write is, I will say total income tax is not accessible to security guard. Every feature that you learn should more or less related to security only, right? So don't you think it's a level of security? Manager should be able to access, security guard should not be able to access. So it become a security level only, right? Data security. So any feature that you learn, whether it is encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, any feature you learn, you must ask yourself, does it add value from the data security point of view? Okay, if it is yes, then of course it is under the object oriented concept. So now what to do, you create you take a role from the user. Okay, you take role from the user. If by chance accountant or manager are coming, then you can create the object of manager. Okay, and that manager class object will be able to call this function as well as this function, this constructor, as well as this variable. But if something is private, let's say private integer x or something, okay, private is always private. Even father can say, this is my private property, I don't want to give to any child. So child cannot demand it, right? Father will say 20% of my property, it is for me only. 80% of my property I want to distribute among my children. That's fine. So that 20% nobody can demand. Similarly, private X, nobody can demand, not even security guard, not even manager, because it's a private. But non-private, whatever you have, Non-private means it may be protected, it may be public. One more also, they are called internal. Little later I will tell you internal. So protected, public or internal, all three things. How much accountant is having rights, that much your manager also having rights. But for private, not even manager, not even security guard. So like that, three labels you have to understand. One is private, means nobody. One is public, everybody. One is protected, conditions apply. What is that? If you are a child, you can access it. If you are not a child, you cannot access it. So these are the three labels of securities we provided to the data. Now what we do, because we know compiler will always come to main and it will exit from main, it will never jump to any other unless you create the object and call them. So my class name here is accountant, manager, etc. But the namespace you can see oops underscore inheritance. Here also you can see namespace is oops underscore inheritance. That means physically they are in two different files, but logically they are in the same boundary. That's why one class can create the object of other class. So what I will do here, inside this main, I will create the object of manager. Let's see whether manager object is able to call both accountant and manager functionality. So here let me write the heading, manager class object can call both manager functionality as well as accountant functionality because they have parent child relation, and most importantly function is not private. If function could be private, then no problem, no chance. Okay, if function could be private, then no chance. Whether it is child or grandchild or neighbor, he cannot access. So what heading we wrote, let's do same thing, manager object. So manager obj manager equal to new manager. So now obj manager is a child class object. So if you will have like this, can you see f1 is also able to access, f2 is also able to access. So f1, that means I want to access accountant's functionality. Similarly, I want to access f2, that is manager's functionality. Okay, absolutely fine. That is what the meaning of this line, what I wrote heading. Then I will write one more heading, security guard object can only access security guard functionality. So what I will do here, I will write some other line here to understand that at least function is getting called. So console.write line. This is security guard function, but doesn't have access to total income or total income tax. So now if I will create the object of security guard class, okay, object name also always give some meaningful name. No need to bother that it's a big name or so. In real-time project, this name even can be even bigger than this, but it should give some meaning. So obj security guard dot, see f3 is accessible, but f1 and f2 is not accessible. Inside that f3, what content is there, what console.writeLine is there, that is not a big deal here. Big deal is who is accessible, who is not accessible. Okay. So now if I will ask you, if you create object of accountant, because all three labels we will see, what happens when child class object created, what happens when base class or parent class object created, and what happens when no relation class object created. So if you create object of accountant class, then what happens? Then only accountant functionality can be accessed. Meaning is, in that real life example I will give you, like father, child and neighbor, three things I used, right? Father, child and neighbor. We don't say it technically. Technically we say parent, not father. So here father is whom? Accountant. Child is whom? Manager. Who is neighbor here? Security guard. That means indirectly saying, if father is giving some, imagine father is having some $1,000, okay, child is having some $200, neighbor is having some $500. Imagine like that. Now what relation we gave? We gave manager colon accountant, right? Manager colon accountant. The moment manager colon accountant I did, this $1,000 came to manager also. That means, can I say now manager got $1,200? Exactly that. If father gave $1,000 to child, child himself is having $200, then if you ask child, he can say, yes, I can give you $1,200. But if you ask to father, father will say, I can maximum give you $1,000 only. Right? And this guy can say, I have no relation with any other manager or accountant. I can maximum give you $500 only. Exactly that I wrote here. If you create object of accountant, maximum what he can offer you is his own features. Similarly, when you create object of security guard, maximum what he can offer you is his own, that is $500 in this case. But child class object, when we are creating, first line number 12, then he can give his own plus his father's functionality or his parent class functionality. So that you keep it in mind. Hierarchy. Okay. So security guard in this case doesn't come in hierarchy. So whenever this relationship, one class to another relationship, is strictly one relationship, for example father to child, then it is called simple inheritance. When it is more than two, that means one father one child is become simple inheritance. But if it become more than two, that means A to B, B to C, grandfather to father and father to child, that time we say it as hierarchical inheritance. So there are two types of inheritance. One is simple inheritance and the second one is hierarchical inheritance, because they comes under one hierarchy, right? Grandfather to father, father to child, child to grandchild, like that. If there is some A to B, B to C, C to D, like that relation is there, up to 2 level, we said up to 2 classes, which is called 1 level. This is simple inheritance. Okay, the moment more classes involved in this, then we say it as a hierarchical inheritance. So this is called hierarchical inheritance. But if C and D doesn't involve, this is called simple inheritance. So anyway, behavior is similar only, simple or hierarchical. In this hierarchy, if I'll ask you, create the object of D, easily we can say that can access A functionality, B functionality, C functionality, as well as D functionality. But conditions apply again. Should not be private. Private is private. Private is totally different. It will not come under any rule, any inheritance, any relationship. But we assume that we are talking about non-private members. So A, B, C, D, 4 hierarchy means D will give me 4 class features, C will give me 3 class features, B object will give me 2 class features, A object will give me only 1 class feature. That is what I wanted to say. So whether it is simple inheritance or whether it is hierarchical inheritance. So let's see this, what we are expecting really, that way it is behaving. So I will say accountant obj acc equal to new accountant, and then obj acc, have a look, only f1 I am able to get. I am not able to get any f2 or f3, because father is a giver, father is not getter. Okay, in real life I don't know, but in inheritance I am telling, here parent class is always a giver, but child class is always a getter. So let's see whether it, if you'll forcefully try to access also, it will say no, I cannot give you access. Suppose you forcefully write f2 open bracket close bracket, it will say no, child object can access parents function, but parent object cannot access child function. So let me write this, comment it, and mention that sentence what I told you. So a child object can access parent function, but a parent object cannot access child function. So you can see program is very less, but my comments are much more. So don't confuse. These are all for your reference only, because this is the time to build the concept. So all these comments just for your understanding. Slowly, when you will be little confident about the concepts, these lines will not come. It will be very simple and straight. Whichever object you want, you create the object and call the respective functionality. So let me put a breakpoint here and execute. Let's see, it is behaving that way. So line number 12, obviously it will go to constructor of the which class. If I'll press F11, have a look where it is going. I press F11 here. Actually, I am creating the object of manager class. So it could have gone to constructor of manager class, right? Why it is going to accountant class constructor? Because that constructor is also public, don't you see? So non-private means it is all yours. If your father is having anything non-private, that is all yours. That means first it will go to parent class called accountant, then it will assign that value so that total income got the value. After that, it will come back and then it will go down. So obj manager got the value, you can see. X doesn't have value, but at least total income tax got the value. So now it will go to F1, means function number 1. Function number 1 is available in which class? Accountant class. So it will not hesitate to go to accountant functionality because accountant is his father only. So accessed, and then it said as of now accountant, inside accountant class I displayed the income tax. Then it will come to F2. F2 is managers class. So F11, can you see it came to managers class functionality called F2, and then it will display that as well without any hesitation, without any trouble, because child class object can access both parent as well as child class functionality. Now I created security guard, which is totally out of our hierarchy. No relation, not even father, not even child. That's why I named it as neighbor class. Actually, in technology, we don't use that word, neighbor class and all. That is just for your understanding. But parent and child, we use in technology also. Okay, parent class, child class. So if I will press F11 here, obviously it will go to security guard functionality F3, and it will display whatever we have written the sentence. So it says inside security guard, I'm not able to access total income because it's not accessible. Then coming to father, that means parent class. In parent class also definitely it might have gone there. Okay. Then F1. F1 is inside accountant only, so it went to F1. Then F10, F10, and F10. Then it says accountant is also able to access total income tax, but he cannot at the same time access function of managers class. Maybe that function might be having some other secret information that will not be accessible to accountant. So parent class object cannot call child class function, but child class object can easily call parent class function. That is what I wrote here. I can see this is called the simplest feature of object oriented programming. Not much complicacy, very straightforward. Now if you want to make one more label also, you can do that. Like for example, somebody says accountant has got inherited to manager, and manager will get inherited to suppose senior manager. Absolutely fine. Senior manager object can access all three classes, something like that. So class, you will say senior manager. Okay. So inside senior manager, suppose you have a function called F. We have up to F3. I will name it as F4. Suppose. Okay. Inside senior, this is accountant. This is manager. This is inside senior manager class. Total income is so and so. So what I have to do? I have to make it like this. Can I say A to B, B to C, accountant to manager, manager to senior manager. Absolutely fine. I mean, there is no extra knowledge required for hierarchical. If you already understood simple inheritance, just one more label you can say. So here, if I will create the object of senior manager instead of simply manager, you can see you will access all three functionality. Have a look. I will not change anything below. I will just change this here. I said senior manager obj manager equals to. So what I will do, I will now try to access that fourth one also. Have a look. Even fourth one is also accessible. So very simple. If you have 50 classes also, rule is same. Okay. Extremely bottommost class can access all above classes, but above any class cannot access bottom classes. So senior manager is able to access all three. Simply manager, if I will take, it will be able to access two, and if I will take accountant, he will be able to access only one. That is what the idea. So though conceptually there are two variety, but I don't think much more rules and regulations you need to know extra. If you know simple inheritance rules and regulations, you already know hierarchical inheritance rules and regulations. So here I will say A is topmost grandfather, below him B, below him C, maybe bottommost grandchild is D. So A, B, C, D, I assume they are all classes. In our case, accountant, manager, senior manager. But security guard anyway no relation, so it can access only his own functionality. Any question, guys? Achha, if you want to restrict one class not to get inherited, then you have to put a sealed symbol. So let me write that as a note. If we put sealed keyword just before class name, then it cannot be parent of any other class. That means restricting the inheritance. That usually in interview people ask you. So that means if you put a sealed word here, for example, anywhere, suppose I said sealed class accountant. Can you see? It will say you cannot access it. It's a sealed type. They say type, but you understand as a class. So it cannot get inherited because it's a sealed class. That is just a general knowledge. So make sure if you want to permit inheritance, this is again for a security reason only. Sometimes you say na ki by mistake also I myself should not be able to access also. I mean should not be inheritant also. It is a very secure information class. It should be independently created the object and used. Nobody should inherit it. Then for a better what to say security purpose, while developing itself you put as a sealed, because who knows in this page you really didn't inherit, in some other page by mistake you will inherit it, whereas this class is having much more secure information you don't want at all, anybody should inherit it. So in such case you should make it sealed. And in real-time project, sometimes you developed some part of the project, your friend developed some other part of the project, right? So you know that is much important. Your friend doesn't know. Maybe he simply inherited it thinking that hey, already that functionality is there, why not I will use it. But security feature hampered. That's why you can just put a sealed word. By chance you want to restrict it not to be get inherited by any other class. Okay, so I think that is all about the inheritance feature. Let me save it. Alright, we'll stop the class here, guys. See you next class.